everyone. I am here with a Bible lesson. This is the last one that's in the book, so we'll be done with these after today. And then I'll start reading a story because I got the books that I ordered for us the other day. And those are true stories, by the way. Okay, so today, Peter's denial. The golden text. Wherefore, let him that thinketh he standeth take heed, lest he fall. And that is 1 Corinthians 10:12. And tonight we'll be reading Matthew chapter 26, verse 31 through 35, and then 69 through 75. And of course, reading about Peter's denial. Good? Okay. So let's put that aside. Alright, so let's begin here. Time, very early morning of the day of the crucifixion. The place, the palace of Caiaphas in Jerusalem. Okay, let's get started with the scripture. Then saith, Then saith Jesus unto them, All ye shall be offended because of me this night. For it is written, he's talking to his disciples, I will smite the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock shall be scattered abroad. He's saying he's going to be hit when they come to arrest him, and the disciples are going to flee from him, leaving him there alone with a mob. But after I am risen again, I will go before you into Galilee. Yet Jesus' feelings didn't change about them knowing they all would flee and leave him there alone. He still loved them. It didn't change whatsoever his feelings for them. And they still loved him too, and Jesus knew that. They were just scared, like Peter. Peter answered and said unto him, Though all men shall be offended because of thee, yet will I never be offended. Jesus said unto him, Verily I say unto thee, that this night before the cock crows, thou shalt deny me thrice. Peter said unto him, Though I should die with thee, yet will I not deny thee. Likewise also said all the disciples. They're like, we won't deny thee, and we'll die with thee. We won't leave you. But Jesus already knows better. Now Peter sat without in the palace. He snuck, when they were taking Jesus away, snuck around and followed as through this, taking him, and then went into the gate there where other people were sitting by a fire. Now Peter sat without in the palace, and a damsel came unto him, saying, Thou also wast with Jesus of Galilee. But he denied it before them all, saying, I know not what thou sayest. That's once. And when he was gone out into the porch, another maid saw him, and said unto them that were there, This fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth. And again he denied with an oath, I do not know the man, twice. And after a while came unto him they that stood by, and said to Peter, Surely thou also art one of them, for thy speech bewrayeth thee. He speaks like a Galilean. Then began he to curse, Peter did, and to swear, saying, I know not the man. And immediately the rooster crowed, the cock crew. And Jesus And Peter remembered the word of Jesus, which said unto him, Before the cock crow, thou shalt deny me thrice. And he went out and wept bitterly. He knew what he'd done, and he was very remorseful for it. It made him feel horrible. You can imagine Jesus turning around looking at him, and Peter looking and seeing Jesus there staring at him, all bloody in the face, and knowing, what he had just done. But Jesus' love for him never changed. He never stopped loving Peter, not even a little bit. And the same with Peter. He never stopped loving Jesus. They were very close. But he was scared. He was just scared. And Jesus knew that. Peter had not been afraid of the mob when they came to the Garden of Gethsemane to take Jesus. He had taken out his sword to protect Jesus. He took out his sword to protect Jesus. He cut off the servant of the high priest's ear. Jesus healed the man's ear that Peter had cut off, and Jesus rebuked Peter for his act. So can you imagine this guy's ear getting cut off and him screaming, and Jesus heals him and gives his ear back, and they still want to take him away. They're not impressed. They're amazed, The disciples had forsaken Jesus and fled, but Peter and another disciple, probably James or John, who was no doubt John, followed him to the office of the high priest. When the cock crew, after Peter had denied Jesus 3 times, Jesus turned and looked upon Peter. Peter remembered the words of Jesus and went out and wept bitterly. See, just like I said, Jesus turned and looked at Peter. Peter seen him. Can you imagine what that would feel like on both sides? I mispicture being Peter then, and how horribly sad, he would have been. And maybe even a little bit worried as well. Peter was one of the disciples, and from the things he said, we feel that he had the most zeal, and he was the boldest of all the other disciples. At one time, he had so much courage, he stepped out of his boat and started walking on the water to Jesus. Jesus told him, "Come." Looking at the waves, he became frightened and cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately, Jesus stretched out his hands and caught him. Peter was overconfident in himself, but he said to Jesus, "Although all shall be offended, yet will I not." Now, to talk about that for a minute, about Peter walking on the water. That was the time that Jesus didn't leave in the boat with them, and they was going over to the other side or whatever. You had to take a boat for. And that night they seen Jesus walking on the water toward the boat, and they were scared because they thought it was a ghost. But Jesus is like, "Don't be afraid, it is I." And then they knew it was him. And Peter said, "If it is you, Lord, tell me to come to you." And Jesus said, "Come." And Peter got out of the boat and was walking on the water, perfectly fine, walking toward Jesus. And then Peter looked down and seen the water and the waves and got scared and fell in. It's like, "Lord, save me, I'm going to drown." And Jesus reached out and, of course, saved Peter. And Jesus said, "You of little faith, why did you doubt?" And then they got in the boat and went to the other side. Jesus told Peter that very night he would deny him 3 times. Peter's answer was, "If I should die with thee, I will not deny thee in any wise." Peter said, "I'm never going to deny you. They can kill me, and I will not deny you." All the others said the same thing. They quickly fled. But Peter seemed to be so sure of himself, just like a lot of you are probably, saying, "Well, if I was there in Peter's place, I wouldn't have denied Jesus." But you don't know what you would have done unless you were actually, truly in this situation. I hate when people say that. Let's see here. Jesus had told the disciples in the Garden of Gethsemane to watch and pray that they enter not into temptation. They did not watch. Peter did not watch neither. Did they pray? Peter saw the Lord in danger, drew out his sword and used it. Jesus would not let him use weapons like that and told him to put his sword in the sheath. The disciples all forsook Jesus and fled. They did not want those men to take them also, but Peter and John decided to follow him. Peter did not have the courage now that he thought he had. He followed afar. John knew the high priest, so he went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. I wonder how John knew the high priest, you know? Were they friends? And apparently they had to be on good terms for him to be led in with Jesus. Let's see. Peter did not have the courage now. Let's see, John knew the high priest, so he went in with Jesus into the palace of the high priest. Peter was afraid to go in, so he stood at the door. John must have gotten permission for Peter to come in with them, for John spoke to the girl who kept the door, and then he went out and brought in Peter. As Peter passed the girl at the door, she asked, "Art not thou also one of this man's disciples?" Peter, the bold one, Peter, the most zealous one, Peter, who had said he might have to die, but he would not deny his Lord, answered, "I am not." Peter lost himself in the crowd gathered there. He did not go on with John to hear the trial. He gathered around the fire that had been built, just like he was one of the crowd, and tried to act unconcerned. As he was warming by the fire, another maid said, "This fellow was also with Jesus of Nazareth." Again Peter denied it and said, "I do not know the man." While Peter was warming himself and getting as comfortable as he could, the high priest was questioning Jesus. Jesus told them that he had not said things secretly. He told them to ask those who had heard him preach, for they knew what he had said. One of the officers struck Jesus with the palm of his hand in his mouth. Jesus told them that justice was in order if he had done wrong. He said, Jesus with the palm of his hand, Jesus told them that justice was in order if he had done wrong. They could bear witness of the evil, but if he had done right, why did they hit him? Peter had not prayed for strength while he was waiting in the garden. He had walked into temptation, but in his own strength he could not stand. One of the servants, a relative of the man whose ear had been cut off, said to Peter, "Did not I see thee in the garden with him?" The third time Peter denied Jesus. He began to curse and to swear. Peter did not think he would ever do such a thing, but he had denied Jesus 3 times and said things that he never should have said. Immediately after denying Jesus 3 times, there came to Peter's ears the sound of the cock crowing. Peter remembered that Jesus had said to him, "Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before thou hast denied me 3 times that thou knowest me." Peter was as guilty of denying Jesus as Jesus said he would be. He went out and wept bitterly over his weaknesses and his failures. He was full of shame and sorrow. Peter had been sure that he could be faithful in his own power. He thought he was brave. He neither watched nor prayed, and he found out he was, after all, a coward. His power was not enough, for he desperately needed God's power. All of us need help to live for Jesus. We cannot stand alone. Perhaps you think you can. You may say, "I am strong. I know how I ought to act, and I am going to do it in my own strength," just like Peter. There are times of temptation and testing ahead in our lives. There will be times when you wish will fall unless you have strength from God to rely on. You cannot meet the temptations and resist them in your own strength. That is why your teachers, your parents, try to lead you to Jesus. Jesus is able to keep you from falling and failing to be a coward. This story tells how a little girl was more bold than Peter, or bolder than Peter had been. An African girl about 9 years old had repeatedly run away from her wicked parents to attend the mission school. Each time she had been dragged back home and severely beaten. In desperation, the child's mother made one last effort to keep her daughter from turning away from their gods. Taking her into the forest, she bound the youngster to a tree, thinking that the lions would frighten the Jesus belief out of her. As the blackness of the night engulfed the shivering child, the angel of the Lord must have encamped about her, for she remained unharmed. At dawn, when a Christian lad found her, he saw the tracks of many lions, but none had come within 5 yards of the tree. The girl said that as she saw the animals, she had prayed that God would protect her, and the Lord soon gave her perfect peace and the calm assurance that he would not let the beasts eat her. Oh, that we might have the faith of that little African child. It is better to trust in the Lord. Psalm 118:8. James and Billy stood on the edge of a frozen pond. Not good. "I believe that ice is strong enough to hold me," said James. Do you? asked Billy. James answered, "Yes." Then Billy said, "If you believe the ice will hold you, get on it." You know how little boys are with each other. Always getting into mischief. James hesitated, then said, "I don't want to get on it." Billy answered, "If you really thought it will hold you, you would get on it. You don't really believe it will." If we really believe that the Lord Jesus can save us from sin, we will trust him. He will then give us life everlasting. Only trust him. Only trust him. Only trust him now. He will save you. He will save you. He will save you now. That was the end of our Bible lesson today, Peter's denial. And that is the end of this whole book we went through together for a Bible lesson. Look at that. All that we read together for a Bible lesson. We made it through the whole book, and it didn't take long at all. I really hope you guys enjoyed this Bible lesson we read together. I was just reading back over it again. So many things were different back in those days. And the times after, before we were born. I mean, children, having to work like adults, and children getting beaten for believing in God and not worshiping the fake gods and idols. And they still have that in some places, guys. India, for one, they worship an idol. That's fake. It cannot hear, it cannot speak, it cannot see. They worship. And some other places are like that as well. I believe China is one of the places that does not allow Christian belief. You'll get arrested and sometimes killed for being a Christian or having a Bible or something there. Missionaries and stuff have went over to China trying to bring some people to the Lord. They have to do it secretly, but they've been arrested, and some are still in prison in China to this day, because the U.S. can't just, be like, give us the prisoners, because they're Americans. They can't just do that, because they're over there. They don't have to give them up, unless, they make a deal or whatever, and some die there, some get killed. Turn your back on God. Admit you don't love Him, that you believe in they worship the dead over there that were the royals, okay? Like, I think the leader now of China, they're worshiping his grandpa or something. His dad or grandpa, one. So crazy. They got him in a glass coffin in a room. He's preserved and everything. And the citizens come in and see him and cry their eyes out. Like worshiping him still. But it's crazy. Things are still like that. They'll be like, you turn your back on Jesus, say He's not real, your God's not real, say He's not real, and praise ours. And if they don't do it, they'll be killed. And if they do it, maybe they'll live, maybe they'll still kill them anyway. But then you just disowned your Lord. And it ain't going to help you when you're dead now. It's sad. It's very sad that it's still like that after all these years in some places. And the missionaries, look how brave they are for going over to those places, trying to bring people to God, to the real God. They're truly doing God's work. I hope you guys have a great rest of your night. Let's bring those souls to Jesus, and God willing, we'll see you guys again tomorrow, starting a story out of one of our new books. Bye guys. God bless. And thank you for joining me with these Bible lessons during this time. God bless. Good night.